gotten so many requests over the course of the past year to review these Neopoi 32s. Drex here from DrexFactor.com with my review of the Neopoi 32 pixel offering. Before we dive in, I just want to give a shout out to the friends of the channel. Big thanks to Dark Monk, Flow Toys, Pyroterra Light Toys, LMF Props, Spinballs, and Ultrapoi for helping to make the videos on this channel possible. You can learn more about all these awesome companies and the work that they're doing to support flow artists like yourself by checking out the links that I've got down in the description of this video. So, we're going to start this review off with a caveat. Namely that it has taken over a year for this review to happen. We're going to get into that a little bit later, but suffice it to say there is a little bit of information in terms of the hardware here that's going to be a little bit out of date, but overall, these should be pretty close to what you can expect to buy from Neopoi today if you wanted to. We're going to run down features, ease of use, durability, battery life, and price, and I'm going to give you 3 things that I like about these and 3 places where I think that they could improve. So Neopoi are probably one of the more unique offerings that I have reviewed in my time on this channel, especially for programmable poi. They have a pretty unique niche in the market in that I'm pretty sure that they have the lowest priced poi currently available for fully programmable poi. And the ways that they have managed to do this are kind of interesting. Some of them I think are really good choices and others of them are kind of like a little questionable, but let's roll through exactly what makes these such a unique product right now. So far as I know, all of the Neopoi models come with the same kind of basic physical characteristics. A plastic tube with 3D printed end caps on either side and a 2-button navigation system, as well as a recessed micro USB charging and programming port. And of course, like many other sets of programmable poi, these come by default with some quite narrow nylon tethers as well as double loop handles. The versions that I have here are actually the 3rd price tier. That is, they include things like image stabilization as well as wireless sync between the 2 poi. The wireless syncing feature is actually handled really, really well. It's one of those things that like I can navigate between the 2 poi very easily by making the adjustment on 1 poi, and I can do all the activations just from that 1 poi as well. It's actually pretty convenient like that. The other really cool thing that happens as a result of this is that you can use either poi as a master and either poi as a slave. It's been a thing that I've seen in a couple other wireless sync versions of programmable poi, that you wind up with a master and a slave version, and I actually like the fact that you can use the wireless sync and either one of them can be the master and either one of them can be the slave. The image stabilization feature is actually something that I had completely forgotten about until I did the preparation for this review. Basically, they detect how fast you are spinning the poi, and they will automatically change the size of the image depending upon the speed of your spinning. Now, a lot of people have tried a bunch of different approaches to using accelerometers in poi in order to get different effects out of it. And I have to admit that this effect is actually really, really interesting to me. And quite frankly, it's something that is so transparent, I didn't even realize it was a feature until I sat down and tested it out. So basically, it's impossible to stretch out or squeeze the images that these produce because they're keeping track of how fast you're spinning. And, you know, if you happen to be that person that really wants to make sure if you're programming in, say, like a company's logo or something like that, that it's always recognizable, that's actually a really good feature to have. The programming interface consists of one of 2 possible options. One is actually a markup language, not that different from HTML, where you actually include the names of each of the images you want loaded, as well as where in a program they happen to pop up. The other option is a PC-based graphic user interface. Now, this lets you load the individual images and determine how long they're going to last in the program and everything. When you upload a program to the poi, they actually load like a jump drive. So you have to save your program to a folder on the poi rather than uploading them like you might in another program. Okay, so now let's talk ease of use. So I will say that despite having an instruction manual, I had a devil of a time figuring out how to properly access all of the different programs on each set of poi here. Part of that is that there's very clearly a language barrier, and also that there are some really interesting and kind of puzzling choices made in terms of the kind of usability of these. So let's take one example here. When I want to shift which program I'm running, if I want to move up one slot, rather than pushing the button that's in that direction, I push the button in the opposite direction. So if I want to move to a programming slot that is closer to the tip of the poi, I have to push the button that is closer to the tether. So now let's talk about the program. I first received these last August, and I was really excited to try them out. And I really quickly discovered that there is a small flaw in the firmware, and that is the biggest reason why it's taken me a year to be able to do this review. So basically, you know how when a Mac basically accesses any storage media that is PC formatted, it adds these little hidden files that include things like information on thumbnails and everything for when it pops up in Mac OS and all that. But the firmware on these is written in such a way that if those hidden files get written to these poi, it bricks them. Basically, you can't get them to turn on or to access any of the programs on them. They give you an error, which is just like a red flickering LED at the very bottom close to the handle, and then they go out and you cannot use them. The only way to fix this is that you have to plug them into a PC and you go through both the root folder as well as all the subfolders and find any of these hidden files, anything that starts with a dot, and delete it. So normally when I review sets of programmable poi that have a PC interface for their the program that writes programs to them, that's repetitive, I basically run them through a virtual box inside of my laptop. Basically, there was physically no way that I could program these poi through my Mac. It took me several months not only to acquire a secondhand laptop, but also to get it running. And because of that, it took me forever to give these a decent test. Now, with all that said, that was not the end of my troubles with these. In the graphic user interface program to program these poi, there's no error checking at all. So not only is it easy to write a program to these that they can't run, quite frankly, it's really likely. In fact, even after programming these and going down to shoot my B-roll with them, I found that I couldn't get the program that I wanted to run on them. I had to go through line by line of the program and change the syntax of it. Now bear in mind, this is a program that the programming interface that the company has created themselves wrote to the poi. This was not one that I tried to write myself and messed up on. This is the way that they're supposed to operate, and it wrote a program that couldn't run. So the bottom line here is that if you are going to program these, that's not a one and done thing, that's a project. Hey friends, so a quick message from Drex from the future, or at least a month after having shot the review that you've been watching so far. I've been going back and forth with Neopoi via email and everything, talking about some of the issues that I encountered as I was programming their poi. And it looks like part of the problem is that the person that they had hired to help them write the PC-based software for programming their poi absconded, and they haven't been able to get a hold of this person. So unfortunately, you know, it's one of those things that they're kind of in a holding pattern to fix some of the issues that I outlined here and everything. As of my recording this video, which is happening on November the 13th, unfortunately, this is still an issue with how the software works for these poi and everything. In the meantime, what you can do is you can drop a bunch of images that have properly formatted file names, which they give you a guide on how to do that, into a folder on the poi themselves, and it will just automatically produce a program for you with them. But as it stands right now, the PC-based program to create programs is a little bit of a challenge to use, and I don't know when that's going to change. Okay, so now let's talk about durability. I will confess that despite having these for a year, because they've been so difficult to use and program, I have barely used them. From what I can tell, they seem to be like any other set of programmable poi in that you want to avoid shocks to them because it can damage the board. I think that that's just baked into this format. Like with the long boards and everything, it's more likely that they're going to take shocks that might damage them over time. I will say that one thing I'm kind of worried about is just that the hardware seems to be all 3D printed and everything. And I've had bad experiences with other poi hardware that's 3D printed over time, but it's kind of a wait and see on that one. For right now, I'm going to call them about normal durability for a set of programmable poi, but I'm going to have my eye on them in the future. Now let's talk about battery life, which is actually a very, very big piece of good news with these. So as many of you will know, I have a kind of default test that I use for any new set of poi that I get that are LEDs. Namely that I basically set them to go full white, as bright as they can, and just leave them to see how long they last. Now on average, programmable poi like these tend to last about 25, maybe 30 minutes if I put them on full white mode. The Neopoi actually get more than 40 minutes on average. So it's nearly twice as much life as I've seen come out of other programmable poi. Now, of course, your mileage is going to vary because you never want to have a program that is just broadcasting pure white on any set of programmable poi. There's a reason that I do that test. It's the most punishing thing you can possibly do to the battery. So if you're loading up logos that have a lot of black space around them or other colors or what have you, you're going to get better battery life. But given that that's the most punishing test I can give these, that bodes really, really well for their battery life overall. So the Neopoi 32s are available at neopoi.com. The lowest price tier for these is $280 a pair, which is kind of their no frills version. It doesn't include the image stabilization or the wireless sync or anything like that. The next price tier up is $315, and that does include the image stabilization. And then the next one up is $345. That includes both the stabilization as well as the wireless sync, and at $365 they will also include a better tether and ball handles. So check that out. Okay, so 3 things I like and 3 things that could use some work here. The image stabilization feature is actually a really cool idea, and once I noticed it was working, it's funny how a thing like that just kind of is so convenient that it almost disappears, and that's definitely a thing that I think these do really well. Also, I will say, the battery life is fantastic for programmable poi. That was a really, really good surprise to find with these, and I hope that they are able to hold on to that in future revisions. And number 3, of course, the price point cannot be beat. Of course, you get what you pay for, but at the same time, for those of you out there who have been looking for programmable poi on a budget, these definitely fill that niche. Okay, now 3 areas of improvement. Okay, number 1, and this is the biggest one, they have to fix the problem with the software. It should not be this difficult to use any set of poi, no matter how much you're paying for them. I'm also going to loop into this. Please fix the firmware so that these can be plugged into a Mac. Even if I can't program them on a Mac, it's such a pain in the butt to have to acquire a completely different laptop to be able to use these. Number 2, there's just some basic things about the interface and the way the hardware is built that I think could use some work. For one thing, the micro USB port is kind of recessed inside what's clearly a cutout little section of this plastic tube and everything. And the problem is that at least half of the micro USB cords that I have won't reach in here because they get stuck on the edges of this little recess here. Also, fixing little things like being able to move up and down the different programming slots by pushing the button associated with that direction rather than the opposite direction. Just little things like that I think would help out a lot. And finally, while I do appreciate that there is a price level at which you can get a better tether and better handles, I really wish that was the default. Honestly, for $280, I don't think anybody's going to object to like putting another $10 or $20 to, you know, have a decent handle and tether on that and everything. All right, so there it is. My review of Neopoi 32s. Do you have a pair of these? What do you think about them? Have you managed to brick them like I did? Let me know down in the comments, and let me know what are your favorite sets of programmable poi out there. If you like this video and you'd like to see more like it in the future, please hit that subscribe button as well as the notification bell. That way you know exactly when I drop a new video. And finally, big thanks to all of my amazing supporters out there on Patreon. They are the reason that this video and all the videos on this channel exist. If you would like to sign up to support the work that I do, head on over to patreon.com/DrexFactorPoi and sign up. You get access to some great exclusive content as well as a say in what content I do create for this channel, and a host of other really awesome rewards. So you should check that out, yeah? Thanks so much in advance.